Please welcome our very own, the Moth hosts of one of the slams here in town, David Crabb.
I was outed to my father by my guidance counselor, Cookie Richardson, when I was 15. Cookie, P.S., is a man, question mark, I don't know. Sidebar. And my dad had a really hard time processing this information. He kept asking me, how you feeling? How you feeling? How you feeling? For months and months, which the subtitle was, are you still gay? Are you still gay? Are you still gay? It was like gay Groundhog Day, just over and over. Still gay, Dad, I'm still gay. Nothing's changed. I meant it. Over the years, most of my family now knows that I'm gay, but one person that doesn't know is my grandmother, Saucy. Saucy isn't her real name. Her real name is Selma, but when I was little, my little gay toddler mouth turned it into the way more fabulous Saucy, which stuck, and everyone calls her Saucy. And it's a really fitting name because she's a little spitfire. She's got like snow white hair and these twinkly blue eyes. She wears sort of tropical print shirts and these like super flammable beige nurse pants. And she's sort of, some people in the family describe her as a bit of a dingbat. She's got a lot going on, like in her kitchen, at her kitchen table. It's more of a workstation. She shucks pecans at one end. There's like a bunch of scary tools and 2 bags. And then there's a little station with an index card holder where she makes her coupons. She cuts her coupons and organizes them alphabetically. And then at the end, it's where she cuts her Dear Abby articles, the ones that she really finds inspiring, to tape to the refrigerator. She has a lot going on, and she's kind of like a whirling dervish. And I always remember one Christmas we were over at the house, and she was talking about something, and she was coming to the table with coffee and this big thing of sugar, and absentmindedly she just poured the whole thing of coffee into the container of sugar. And my aunt leaned over and she said, I love your grandmother, but she is like a fart in a hot skillet. Which I don't know what that means, but if you met Saucy, it's like, it's right. It's just kind of like a lot of air and sizzle. And I love Saucy so much. She talks a lot. She tells a lot of stories. I've heard a lot of them many times repeatedly over the years. She tells this one all the time about Baby, which is this little baby deer that her mom tripped over when she was going to use the bathroom in the front yard in Hondo, Texas, and then they raised it as their own on the porch like a dog. It's this endless thing. And it's that story that one of your grandparents tells that whenever they tell it, you sort of take your phone out to see what people are like Instagramming from New York. You know what I mean? It's the guy, yeah. It's still cute. Wonder what'll happen this time. But I love hearing this story, but I kind of check out. Now, my grandmother is going to be 90 this year. And about 6 months ago, I saw her, and we hung out, and she told me the story again. And then, since then, some stuff happened. Her house was sort of falling into disrepair, and they got worried about her, so they put her in an assisted care facility. And then she fell off her bed, and she broke her back, and she had to have back surgery. And then they put her in a full care facility, and they realized that she had Alzheimer's, and it was hitting her really, really quickly. And my dad told me all this on the phone, and I was preparing myself. So 2 months ago, I visited home, and I drove out to this little town in Texas where the old age home is, and I went in. And the first thing I saw when I opened the door was the happy nurses, and then I saw like different women on walkers. One had chili pepper earrings, and she was like, "It's a beautiful day," and I was like, "Yes." And then I saw this tiny Hispanic man in a wheelchair, and he wore an eye patch, and he smiled and he winked at me. And I don't know how I know that he winked, but if someone with an eye patch ever winks at you, you'll know. I think I did. And then I went a little bit further, and there were like people with canes, and then I turned the corner, and there were people just wandering around in gowns, and then there were just people in wheelchairs, but like parked in a hallway. And it felt almost like a haunted house, like it was just getting increasingly scarier. And at the end of this hallway, I saw this woman, and she was sitting, and she had sort of yellowed hair. She was sitting in this tan sort of short-sleeved T-shirt, and she was in a wheelchair. And I went to move past her, and as I did, I felt a tug on my shirt, and I looked down, and I saw these twinkling blue eyes, and it was my grandmother, and she said, "Please get me out of here. I've been here since yesterday." And she'd been there for weeks. I took her wheelchair out of park, which took a long time to figure out. I've never done that. And I wheeled her into her room, and I started immediately just cleaning the room, like doing busy work that didn't matter, like fluffing pillows of a bed on the other side of the room where no one slept in, and she just kept asking me the whole time, why am I here, and when will I go home? I want to go home. Please take me home. And then I would tell her where she was, and then she would ask again, I don't understand. Where am I? How long have I been here? When am I going home? And I would tell her, and she would ask again and again and again. And then finally she said, I need to go home to Papa. And Papa is my grandfather who died in 1997. And I went out in the hallway and I just started sobbing. And I realized I had left my grandmother alone. I was running away from my own grandmother. And I wasn't crying like pretty, I was like Julianne Moore crying, like that pinch face, really wet, mucusy, like there's sounds in there, And then I realized I needed to go back in, and I went back in, and I looked at my grandmother, and I just had this crazy white-out experience, and I had the most inappropriate thought, which is, this is the best time ever to come out to my grandmother. Hear me out, okay? Because there are two options. I'm a winner either way. One, saucy, I'm gay, the rest of the family knows, and I feel like I should tell you. And she says, I can't believe this. I'm so ashamed of you. I wish you would go to church and repent. And she starts crying and says, get out of my room. At which point I get out of her room, and then in a few minutes I come back in, and she says, David, I haven't seen you in so long. Option two, I say, saucy, I'm gay. My roommate from New York that you've met the last few years is actually my fiance. We've been in love for 10 years, and we're getting married next year. And she hugs me, and she tells me that you're special and wonderful, and I love you, even though you're weird. She would make it somehow insulting, but heartwarming. And then I would be able to give her that experience over and over and over again. It would be like the best gay Groundhog Day ever, you know what I mean? And I looked at her, and I sat down on the bed next to her, and I went to hold her hand, and I realized she was holding this big plastic hairbrush, and she was grinding it into her knee, and I could tell the fabric was worn away, and I wondered for how long has she been sitting there just doing this in a loop. And it occurred to me that my grandmother was not a sounding board. She was not a vessel waiting for new information, and she didn't need information to love me any more than she always had. She loved me when she bought me the Xanadu record. She loved me when I pointed and spun to Saturday Night Fever. She loved me the time we were watching The Golden Girls, and I said, you're the Rose, I'm the Dorothy. And so I just said, tell me about baby. And it was the first time that she looked at me, and she looked really, really present for a minute, and she said, oh, baby is this little deer that my mom found when I was little. She thought she tripped over a rock, but she looked, and it was this little abandoned deer. So we brought it on the porch, and we raised it there. And when the deer got bigger, I always remember poke its big head through the kitchen window, and I would feed it scraps and make my mama so mad. And then when it got bigger in those summers, I would curl up with that deer like a dog, and I would just hold it, and I loved that deer so much. And as she told me the story, I thought about all the times I looked at my phone to see what people were Instagramming from New York. And I felt really bad, because in that moment, I think I could have listened to her tell that story again and again in a loop forever. Thank you.
David Crabb.